Banks are closing all over the world, but not for the reason you were told. This isn't a banking crisis explained by failure. It's about control. Banks aren't failing. They're being shut down inside a global financial system. What you're watching unfold is a global Ponzi scheme hiding in plain sight. The Ponzi scheme that runs the world doesn't collapse by accident. This is a global financial scam designed to centralize power. A hidden banking agenda shaping who controls money. This is banking system control at a global scale. A money control system built through financial manipulation. And most people never see the hidden financial system working against them. This Finance documentary connects every piece. Stay with me. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Imagine a business model so perfectly engineered that it can generate virtually infinite profit. A system so powerful that it has destroyed empires, ruined millions of lives, and yet continues to operate every single day, right in front of your eyes. But there is one terrifying condition. It only works as long as nobody tries to get their money back at the same time. This kind of structure has a very specific name. We call it a Ponzi scheme. And the question that will haunt you until the end of this video is simple and deeply unsettling. What if the largest Ponzi scheme in history isn't illegal? When you hear the term Ponzi scheme, your mind probably jumps straight to the classic villains of finance. Charles Ponzi, Bernie Madoff, faces forever associated with fraud, greed, and prison sentences. We look at these stories with a comforting sense of superiority, telling ourselves, they were exceptions. The system works. They broke the rules and paid the price. But what if that conclusion is completely wrong? What if they weren't arrested for cheating the system, but for running an unauthorized version of it? Take a deep breath, because what I'm about to say sounds insane at first. But if you stay with me until the end of this video, it may become the only explanation that actually makes sense. What if the only real difference between Bernie Madoff's multi-billion-dollar fraud and the global economy you participate in every single day is that one of them ended in prison and the other was rewarded with prestige, power, and Nobel Prizes? That thought is unsettling because it suggests that the money in your bank account, the mortgage you stress over, and even your retirement savings might not be built on solid ground, but floating on an ocean of debt and promises that can never truly be honored. From a young age, we are trained to trust. We trust banks to safeguard our money. We trust governments to manage the currency. We trust Wall Street to drive economic growth. Over time, that trust becomes automatic, almost invisible. But here is the part that rarely gets said out loud. The modern financial system isn't broken. It isn't failing. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. And what you are about to discover may permanently change the way you see the world, because the corruption that looks like a flaw is actually the core mechanism of the machine. Think about the uneasy feeling you get when you look at your grocery bill, or when you compare your paycheck today to what it was 5 years ago and realize that despite working harder, your money buys less. That quiet moment of confusion, that sense that something doesn't add up, that isn't bad luck. It isn't coincidence. It is the result of a system that operates with the same logic as a cartel. When we think of organized crime, we imagine violence and threats. When we think of banks, we see glass towers and men in suits. But the objective is identical. Extract wealth from the many and concentrate it in the hands of the few, protected by a layer of complexity designed to stop ordinary people from asking the right questions. You might be thinking this sounds heavy, maybe even like a conspiracy theory. But stay with me, because we're not dealing in speculation here. We're going to break down, step by step, the cold and mechanical reality of how money actually works. No jargon, no academic smokescreens. If you've ever felt like the economy is a casino where the house always wins, that feeling isn't paranoia, it's awareness. The most successful con artists in history didn't use guns. They used confidence. They made their victims feel safe right up until the exact moment the trap snapped shut. The global economy runs on the same fuel: confidence. You believe the paper in your wallet has value. You believe the numbers on your screen represent real wealth. But what happens when we pull back the curtain and look inside the machine that creates those numbers? What you'll find isn't a vault filled with gold. It's a trick so sophisticated that it makes Bernie Madoff look like an amateur. And to understand how this legalized illusion works, we have to go back to the very foundation of banking itself, to the place where money begins to be created out of nothing, a concept that sounds boring, technical, and harmless, but is actually one of the most dangerous tools ever invented. It is the first gear in the machine. And once you understand it, nothing you believe about banks will ever be the same again. This is where everything begins. Before we go any further, I need you to do something important. Pause for just a second and ask yourself this. Have you ever felt that something about money doesn't make sense, even if you couldn't explain why? That quiet discomfort you get when prices rise faster than your income. That strange realization that no matter how hard you work, the finish line keeps moving further away. If you've ever felt that, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not crazy. This is the moment where this video stops being just information and becomes a shared realization, because the system only survives as long as people believe the problem is personal, that you didn't work hard enough, that you didn't invest well enough, that you made the wrong choices. But what if the real problem isn't you at all? What if millions of people in different countries with different backgrounds are all experiencing the same pressure for the exact same reason? If this thought resonates with you even a little, I want you to signal it. Leave a comment saying, "I felt this." Not for me, for the algorithm, yes, but more importantly, for the people reading the comments who think they're alone in this feeling. Because the moment people realize this isn't an individual failure, the illusion starts to crack. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Everything we talked about in the first block was just the surface, just enough to make you suspicious. What comes next is the point where the story stops being abstract and starts becoming mechanical. This is where we stop talking about symptoms and start exposing the engine itself. And once you see how that engine works, it becomes painfully clear why the system doesn't need to be fixed, because from the inside, it's already perfect. What I'm about to show you is not an opinion, not a theory, and not a metaphor. It's the exact moment where money stops being something that exists and starts being something that is manufactured. This is the step most explanations conveniently skip, because if you understand it, the entire structure above it begins to wobble. So if you're still here, this is your warning. What comes next is the point of no return. This is where the story stops being comfortable. This is where everything you think you know about banks, savings, and financial security starts to fall apart, quietly, logically, and all at once. And it all begins with a single, deceptively simple mechanism. To understand how this works, forget everything you think a bank does. Instead, imagine a magician standing on a stage. He asks for a single bill from the audience, just one. He holds it up so everyone can see. It's real, solid, undeniable. And then, with confidence and perfect timing, he performs the trick. When he opens his hands again, there isn't one bill anymore. There are 10. The audience applauds. What they don't see is that this illusion only works as long as no one asks for their original bill back at the same time. This is not a metaphor. This is the foundation of modern banking. First trick. You deposit your money in a bank, let's say $1,000. In your mind, that money is now stored, safe, waiting for you. But in reality, the moment it enters the system, it stops being treated as your money. The bank keeps only a small fraction, sometimes as little as 5%, and lends the rest to someone else. On paper, you still have your $1,000. On paper, the borrower now also has that same money. 2 claims, 1 base. Now pause here, because this is the part nobody explains clearly. The money wasn't moved, it wasn't transferred, it was duplicated. Not physically, but legally. And legality is all that matters. Second trick. That loan gets deposited into another bank. That bank repeats the process, keeps a fraction, lends the rest, again and again. With each cycle, new money appears, not printed, not earned, just typed into existence. What started as $1,000 quietly becomes $10,000 or more, circulating through the economy as if it were real wealth. Now comes the question most people never ask. If this money was created from nothing, what backs it? The answer is uncomfortable. Nothing backs it. except your confidence that the system will keep running tomorrow. At this point, some viewers feel a strange relief. They think, so this is how it works. It's risky, but it's managed. And that's exactly where the illusion deepens. Because here comes the part nobody tells you. Now comes the part they never teach you in school. This system doesn't just allow instability, it requires it. Because if everyone tried to withdraw their money at once, the magician's hands would be empty. The bills don't exist. They never did. That's why trust isn't a feature of the banking system. It's the fuel. The moment trust disappears, the entire structure collapses. And here's where repetition becomes dangerous. Because once you see the trick, you start noticing it everywhere. Inflation isn't an accident. Asset bubbles aren't accidents. Financial crises aren't glitches. They are pressure releases in a system that is constantly expanding promises faster than reality can support them. You might be thinking, surely someone controls this. Surely there's a referee. And that instinct makes sense. Which brings us to the next character in this story. Because banks don't perform this magic alone. Behind the curtain, standing in silence, is an institution with a power that makes commercial banks look small. An entity that decides when the magic accelerates, and when the audience is allowed to feel pain. This is where the illusion stops being local and becomes global. This is where money creation stops being a trick and turns into a weapon. And once you understand who controls that lever, you'll realize something even darker. The real game doesn't happen inside banks. It happens above them. I'm not asking you to agree with me. Just observe the pattern. When people hear the word mafia, they imagine backroom meetings, whispered threats, and envelopes sliding across dark tables. They picture violence, fear, and absolute loyalty enforced from the top down. But strip away the accents, the guns, and the movies, and what you're left with is a structure. A structure built on control, extraction, and protection. And once you see that structure clearly, it becomes impossible to ignore how familiar it looks. Wall Street doesn't operate like the mafia because it's evil. It operates like the mafia because the incentives are the same. First pillar, control of the flow. In organized crime, the mafia controls territory. Nothing moves without permission. On Wall Street, control isn't physical, it's financial. Credit decides who expands, who survives, and who collapses. Entire industries rise or die not because of innovation, but because capital opens or closes its gates. When access to money is controlled by a few, freedom becomes conditional. Second pillar, privatized profits, socialized losses. In mafia families, the boss takes a cut when things go well, but when things go wrong, the street pays the price. Wall Street perfected this logic. During booms, gains are celebrated as genius. During crashes, losses are labeled systemic risk and quietly transferred to taxpayers. If that sounds unfair, it's because it is. But it's also consistent. This isn't corruption in the shadows. It's policy in daylight. Third pillar, enforcement without fingerprints. The mafia enforces obedience through fear. Wall Street enforces obedience through complexity. Contracts no one reads. Products no one understands. Crises no one can stop. The result is the same, compliance. Not because people agree, but because the cost of resistance feels too high. When the rules are incomprehensible, the winners are the ones who write them. Now pause here, because this is where skepticism usually kicks in. This is dramatic, some will say. Markets aren't criminal organizations, and that's fair. Labels can distract. So forget the word mafia for a moment. Focus on behavior, repeated patterns, identical outcomes. When different systems produce the same winners and the same victims, the comparison stops being emotional and starts becoming analytical. Here's the part that matters most. This isn't about hatred of bankers, traders, or suits in glass towers. It's about incentives. People behave rationally inside irrational systems. And when the system rewards extraction over creation, the result will always look predatory, no matter how legal it is. But this story isn't just about institutions or headlines. There's a personal consequence hiding underneath all of this. Because when capital is protected at all costs, someone else absorbs the shock. Inflation quietly taxes your savings. Crashes erase years of effort in months. Retirement becomes a moving target you're always chasing but never reaching. This is the moment where the question stops being, "Is Wall Street corrupt?" and becomes, "Why am I the one paying for it?" And to answer that, we have to follow the money one level higher. Everyone remembers 2008. Even if you didn't understand finance back then, you remember the feeling, the fear, the headlines, banks collapsing, markets freezing, jobs vanishing overnight. It was sold to the public as a once-in-a-lifetime disaster, a perfect storm, an accident no one could have predicted. But here's the part that should make you uneasy. When the system broke, it didn't fall on those who broke it. It fell on everyone else. Behind closed doors, decisions were made at a speed normal people can't even imagine. In a matter of days, sometimes hours, governments committed sums of money so large they stopped sounding real. Numbers so big they lost emotional meaning. Enough to fund schools, hospitals, and infrastructure for generations. Enough to erase entire national debts. And almost all of it flowed in one direction, upward. Here's a detail most people never hear clearly. While millions of families were losing their homes, the institutions that caused the collapse were not just rescued, they were made whole. Executives kept bonuses. Banks merged, grew larger, and became even more systemically important. In other words, too big to ever be allowed to fail again. That wasn't a mistake. That was the lesson the system chose to learn. Now comes the predictable reaction. Yes, but they had to do it. We were told the bailouts were necessary, that without them, the entire economy would collapse. And maybe that's true. But ask yourself this one question. If a system requires unlimited public money to save private institutions, who does that system actually serve? Here's the twist most people miss. The bailouts didn't fix the problem. They locked it in. They sent a message louder than any law ever could. Risk is rewarded as long as you're big enough. From that moment on, the game changed. Banks didn't become more cautious. They became more confident. Because they had just learned something invaluable. Losses are temporary, but protection is permanent. And this is where the story stops being about 2008. Because after the crisis, the money creation didn't slow down. It accelerated. Emergency measures became standard policy. Printing became normal. Debt stopped being a warning sign and turned into a strategy. What was once unthinkable became routine. And every time the system wobbled, the solution was the same. More liquidity, more guarantees, more distance between consequences and decisions. If you feel like life became more expensive after that, you're not imagining it. If it feels harder to save, harder to plan, harder to feel secure, that's not coincidence. The cost of saving the system didn't disappear. It was simply spread out, diluted, and quietly injected into everyday life through inflation, asset bubbles, and permanent instability. And here's the most dangerous part of all. This story didn't end with 2008. That was just the rehearsal. The tools built to save the economy back then are now used reflexively, automatically, on a scale that would have been unthinkable before. The safety net has turned into a launch pad. So the real question isn't, will there be another bailout? The real question is, who will be rescued next time, and who won't? Because once you understand this, you start to realize something chilling. The system no longer fears collapse, it fears accountability. Inflation is usually explained like bad weather. Something that just happens. A force of nature. Too complex to point fingers at. But forget the textbooks for a moment and look at your own life. The grocery bill that keeps climbing. The rent that jumps without warning. The feeling that your money is leaking value even when it's sitting still. That isn't abstract economics. That's the system touching you directly. Here's the first thing to understand. Inflation doesn't hit everyone at the same time. Imagine new money entering the economy like water poured into one end of a long pipe. The people closest to the source feel the pressure first. They spend it while prices are still low. Everyone else down the line gets soaked later, after prices have already risen. This isn't a theory. It's a pattern that's been observed for centuries. It even has a name, the Cantillon effect. Let's make this painfully concrete. When central banks create new money, it doesn't land in your bank account. It goes to financial institutions, large corporations, and governments first. They buy assets, stocks, real estate, entire companies. Asset prices rise. Headlines celebrate growth. Meanwhile, wages barely move. So by the time the money reaches you, through higher prices, higher rents, higher interest, it has already lost much of its purchasing power. This is why inflation feels unfair. Because it is. You don't wake up one morning richer. You wake up needing more money to buy the same things. Coffee costs more, gas costs more, food costs more, and somehow, you're told this is normal, healthy even, a sign the economy is working. But from your perspective, it feels like running on a treadmill that quietly speeds up while no one is looking. Now here's the part that connects everything we've discussed so far. Inflation isn't just a side effect of the system, it's the release valve. It's how the cost of bailouts, debt, and endless money creation is transferred to you without a vote, a bill, or a debate. Instead of taking money directly, the system reduces the value of what you already have, slowly enough that people argue about causes, but fast enough that savings never catch up. Break this down to everyday reality. If you saved for years, inflation punishes you. If you live to paycheck, it suffocates you. If you own assets, it protects you. And if you control the flow of money, it rewards you. That hierarchy is not accidental. It is built into the mechanism. This is where the Cantillon effect stops being an economic concept and becomes a moral one. Because once you see who benefits first and who pays last, inflation stops looking like mismanagement and starts looking like design. And here's your warning. This leads directly to the conclusion. Because a system that survives by constantly diluting money must always grow, always expand, always print. Stability becomes impossible. Crises become useful. And inequality becomes permanent. Which leaves us with one final question. If this is how the game works, what does it mean for you? Everything we've talked about leads here. Not as an accusation, not as a slogan, but as a question you now have to answer for yourself. If money is created from nothing, if trust is the fuel that keeps the system alive, if losses are protected and gains are privatized, if inflation silently transfers wealth downward, then what do you call a structure that only survives as long as new money keeps entering? Old promises are rolled forward, and collapse is avoided by constant expansion? You don't have to accept the word Ponzi. You just have to recognize the pattern. This is where the story stops being about banks, governments, or Wall Street and becomes about you. Because every system like this depends on participation, on belief, on people waking up every day and continuing to play, not because they fully understand the rules, but because opting out feels impossible. This is the moment people describe as taking the red pill, not because you suddenly know everything, but because you can't unsee what you've already seen. The magic trick doesn't work anymore. The applause stops, and once that happens, there are only two options left. You either look away, or you start asking different questions. Here's the danger of certainty. The system doesn't collapse when people criticize it. It collapses when people stop believing it will protect them. That's why the most powerful force isn't rebellion, it's awareness. Quiet, individual, irreversible awareness. And now you're standing at that line. No one is telling you to panic. No one is telling you to burn it down. The real decision is far more subtle. Do you keep treating money as something solid and safe? Or do you start treating it as what it really is? A promise that only works as long as everyone agrees to pretend. This video doesn't end with answers. It ends with a shift in perspective. Because the next step isn't philosophical, it's practical. In the next video, we're going to talk about what this understanding actually changes in your life. How people who see the system clearly behave differently, save differently, protect themselves differently. This is the point where awareness becomes action. And once you cross it, there's no going back. If this video shifted the way you see money, even slightly, don't let that moment fade. Awareness only matters if it's reinforced. So here's the simplest action you can take right now. Subscribe. Not because of the algorithm, but because what comes next builds directly on what you've just understood. This channel isn't about panic. It's about clarity, about seeing patterns early instead of paying for them later. And the next video is where this knowledge stops being abstract and starts becoming useful. If this perspective resonated with you, signal it. Like the video. Leave a comment. Not to argue, but to connect with others who are waking up to the same questions. That's how communities form. Quietly, organically. You've already taken the first step by watching until the end. Now don't stop here.